But I think you brought up an
Yep.
interesting point about just things being digestible. So I'm probably on one end of the spectrum as well as you are, where we just like dive in and indulge ourselves with a lot of podcasts. There's probably like 50
Yep.
podcasts in my Apple
Yeah.
Podcast app that I just are always looking at
Yep.
all the time or listening to at bits and pieces. So it gives me like each one I think is a different channel. Like what am I in the mood for type of deal? You know, do
Yep.
I want to be educated? Do I want to hear something funny? Do I want to hear more about sports? Um,
Yep.
but it's on my own time and
Hmm.
it's at the pace that I want to go. And I can always go back to it. So I think that's the one thing that podcasting lends itself. I can do it when I'm walking the dogs. I can do it when I'm at the
You can
gym.
multitask.
It can multitask. Yeah.
That's the most important thing, I think, because like blog content, even an ebook, dude, you gotta
You
like
got to take
how many
time.
times have you like, yeah, yeah, I downloaded the ebook, it's amazing. I'm gonna put it in my reading folder and I
Right.
never read it. You know what I mean? And certainly the same thing can happen to a podcast. You'll get lost and
Sure.
all. But I think it's a lot easier. I guess it takes less commitment to like listen to a podcast in a way than it
Right.
does to sit down and read a long blog post or
Right.
an ebook or whatever. You know, so yeah, I completely agree with it. Yeah, it's fascinating, man. Like I think one of the articles I shared with our team about kind of like the evolution of podcasting. I think you mentioned Serial earlier. I think Serial was kind of like that, like tipping point, if you would, where podcasting kind of like made its mass consumer appeal.
Yep.
Obviously Joe Rogan and those guys had been on the platform for years, right? They had a pretty devoted following. But I think Serial was one of those things where I was listening to it, my mom was listening to it,
Right.
or,
Bridge the
like
gap. Yeah.
someone's grandma's listening. Yeah, exactly. So it's a universal thing that kind of bridges the gap between all demographics and all generations and things like that. And so I think right now we're just kind of in this hyper growth period of podcasting and kind of again relating this back to why we started this series around the whole coronavirus and everything is, ultimately we think that there's going to be another like jump in hyper growth in podcasting as a result of this. And look, there's going to be so many content creators that are holed up like on self quarantine and things like that. They're going to
Yep.
start their own podcast, brands that are going to do it. And I think a reason why we decided to do this like Skype style thing was well, number one, we got locked out of our office because the state got shut
Yeah.
down. But I think we also wanted to demonstrate to everyone, right, that like you don't got to have a crazy
Right.
studio or
Right.
anything like that to execute a strategy like this. In fact, if you want to do it via Skype, as long as you've got the right strategy and team in place, it's pretty easy to do it,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
But it took us, a few hours to record all of this and film it together, but it took many hours of pre-planning,
Right.
right?
Right.
And discussion and lining up things and stuff. And then obviously you've got all the post-production work that has to happen after this. But I think like us showing you that, dude, you don't, and even the Ringer themselves and
Yeah.
other like pretty well-known podcasts are taking the same approach right now that everyone's kind of quarantined and they can't travel and stuff.
Yeah. You still
So
got to get
I
content
think
out.
exactly. And I think, dude, this is the new normal. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yep.
Where you want to put out like rich media, but maybe you don't have the time or the physical ability to do it. So we can cut corners like this by still we want to be able to see each other's faces. We want to be able to hear each other's voices, right? That still accomplishes the same task. And maybe it's not as polished as having our studio set up, but it gets the job done, you know?
Right, right. Yeah, and again, just something that we've always leaned on, like the strategy and the content are the king and queen of this
Yep.
whole thing. If your strategy is not right and you build all the best content, then it doesn't matter because crickets, like you mentioned. And if you have
Yep.
the best content but no strategy, you can put it out there, but again, crickets because it's just sitting out there with no real actionable measure taken to it, so nobody can find it, nobody can search it, or it's just getting into the wrong hands and it just kind of dissipates into the environment of the rest of the
Yep.
content that kind of sits out there. So I think that's
For sure.
that's a great thing. And just to touch back on like this is going to be the new normal. I actually watched a YouTube video of Jimmy Fallon sitting in his backyard doing the Tonight Show from his kid's tent. So right now
Yep.
everybody's feeling the pinch of this, which is it's the great
Yeah.
equalizer, right? Like everybody is literally at
Yep.
the same level right now, which is interesting. It's an interesting time. Yeah. So I mean, just if you have an idea, execute it, but think about it
Just do it.
thoroughly and just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just execute it. Don't
Yeah.
don't hold back
Yep.
because of you think that the quality of it might not or might be the reason that it doesn't get what you think it's going to get.